Good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome on behalf of the PPS Group. I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. My name is Linda Sherlock. I'm the Executive Head of Wealth Advisory and Business Development for PPS. And today we have two exciting parts of this discussion to share with you. To start with, I'm going to take you through a very quick journey on wealth advisory within the PPS environment. Our PPS journey in wealth, sorry, could I go to the next slide, please? Our PPS journey in wealth started over 2 years ago as we started to consider what were the needs for us to look after members who fell into the high net worth space. Over those 2 years, we did a lot of ideation, consideration, surveys, and got inputs from not only yourselves, but from research partners out in the industry. Out of that, we were able to birth in February of this year an exclusive wealth management boutique, offering for qualifying PPS members a range of wealth management solutions. What informed that were the concerns, worries, needs, and issues that you as individuals are facing on a daily basis. We're delighted that at PPS, our purpose is to serve our members and help you live the life you deserve. And in order to bring that to life in the wealth environment, it was important that we understood what the issues were that you were facing, whether it was the political environment, succession and inheritance concerns, stock market volatility, tax on wealth. What was an interesting stat that we found through Catalyst was that the political issues within the engineering, legal and accounting sector were of the biggest concern. That, of course, led to the need to protect and create wealth and ensure that you have succession planning in place due to some of the uncertainties that you were feeling. Next slide, please. Coming up in front of you are the amazing specialist wealth managers that were brought into the Wealth Advisory division in order to look after you, our wealth members. Our footprint from the Western Cape, Johannesburg, and KZN is supported by a group of specialists who have over 100 years of experience within the wealth environment. And we're delighted that they're available to assist you on every single step of your journey. Next slide, please. Our focused offering for you, our distinctive individuals, ensures that we're looking at a holistic implementation plan. That means we look at everything end to end, whether it's your risk solutions, your investment solutions, or services that you need, for example, tax planning or tax assistance. We ensure that our solutions are brought to you from our premium brand for professionals, being PPS. We understand that your lives are complex and that you need complex solutioning. And we're able to deliver that within the wealth advisory environment through our specialists who ensure that we remove market complexity and clutter. Next slide, please. Your wealth manager is supported by an associate wealth manager and has specialist support services giving them the wings needed to ensure that your complex needs are taken care of, being fiduciary services, tax services, offshore services, estate planning, trust and business assurance services. We look to serve not only you, but your family and your business associates, should you be in your own business environment. We're also able to bring to you family pricing through PPSI on your investments, and we ensure adherence of best practice and house views all along the way. That means that our wealth managers act within a determined process, ensuring that whatever it is that we deliver to you from advice to solutions meet our best practice and house views at all time. Being part of our PPS world and our PPSI world on the investment side, we're able to gain addition to your profit share accounts, making sure that you're even more prepared for those days in retirement. Next slide, please. All of our wealth solutions were premised on quality using international standards, which we then applied locally to the South African market. We ensured that our relationships were at the center of everything that we do. Our client centricity was a premise of the premium brand that we were delivering in the wealth advisory market. We believe that our offering is prestigious through the quality advice and best practice that we bring to our interactions with you, our member. And we ensure a high touch experience. The high touch experience, as I said earlier on, is brought to you by a team of specialists that support your personal wealth manager. Next slide, please. As required in any wealth business, we needed to ensure we had a robust solutions basket to meet all of your needs. And we've ensured that the solutions basket assists us in protecting what's important to you, helping you build the reality of what you dream of, assisting you to craft the future that you desire, and helping you to grow what you've already built. For this, we not only offer you solutions, we offer you a wealth management experience aligned to the experience that you personally deserve. At this point, I'd like to conclude on our wealth section of the presentation and just spend a moment introducing our keynote speakers for the day before we go into the core session of today's forum. The session is about answering key questions that you, our members, have been asking us over the last few months. We thought it best to go straight to the source and made sure that we bring out our keynote speakers and heavy hitters to ensure that you can hear directly from the leaders who are driving this retirement opportunity. Our first speaker is the chairman of the PPS RA fund, Mr. James Downey. And James has been the chairman of the fund for the last 10 years. He's a board member of PPS Holding Trust and a board member of PPS Insurance Company. He has also been an independent retirement fund trustee for over 25 years and proud to say that he has been a PPS member for 30 years. He will provide you with the insight into the vision of the board, why the offer, and why now. Joining James Downey is James Fraser, our Chief Operating Officer of PPS Investments. James has been in the financial industry for over a decade and has fulfilled many roles during this time. Well versed in all matters within our business, and over the last 5 years has been a key driver in implementing the strategic enhancements in PPS Investments. For example, the family pricing I spoke about. He will focus on the impact of costs on your retirement savings and tools we have built to assist you in making the right decision for your retirement annuity. I would like to therefore move to talking about evolution and the gradual development of how things happen. Evolution is a gradual and steady journey, and we don't see the constant change that is taking place until enough time has passed. The picture on the screen shows you the old-fashioned telephone versus the smartphone, which is within range of our fingers and ears at all times, 24/7. Something that's so fundamental to our daily lives and met our needs at a point in time almost looks archaic right now. It's easy to relate to what the landline phone did for us 30 years ago, but in comparison to how we use our smartphones today, we are connected in every form and need in real time. Our needs have also changed. Our lives have adapted, and we have ended up needing something different. And so the smartphone becomes that new fundamental thing to our daily lives. Similarly, PPS has evolved over the last 79 years, from providing income protection in 1941 to a fully diversified financial group today, adapting over time to the ever-changing needs of you, our members, now providing you with investments, short-term, medical aid, insurance, and a full other basket of solutions. Through all of this evolution, the one thing that has not changed is our core values. We are still a member-focused business, and all our decisions are still made with you, our members' best interests at heart. I will now hand over to our first keynote speaker, Mr. James Downey, Chairman of the PPS RA Fund, who will take us through the fund's evolution and its vision for its members. Over to you, Mr. Downey.
Thanks, Linda. Thanks very much, and good morning to everybody from a very chilly Cape Town. I think just to kick off, the trustees are really chuffed that we've got this opportunity to reach out to members and advisors. We've tried over the years to find ways to do it with probably limited success, and I think lockdown has provided us the opportunity through webinars like this to reach far more members than we'd ever dreamt we could before. If we go to the next slide. The PPS RA fund was started in 1960, as you can see on the slide, and was pretty much just a Sanlam RA in those days. It wasn't necessary to do anything different to what Sanlam was offering, mostly because at that stage PPS was almost an agency. In those days, it didn't have an insurance license, it didn't have a multi-manager license, didn't have an investment management license, didn't have a short-term insurance company, all of which we now have. The RA fund is run by a board of trustees. We call them trustees. It's sort of fallen into the vernacular that we call trustees. There are 6 of us. We have accountants, an actuary, investment specialist. We have legal boffins, we have a principal officer and a deputy principal officer in addition to the board, and we have the chair of PPS Holdings Trust is a trustee as well. We're very diverse in skills and many other ways as well, and our job is simply to look after the members. That's all we do. Every one of us except for the deputy principal officer is independent of PPS. We may have other roles to play, we may be on other boards in the group, but none of us, apart from the deputy principal officer, is employed by PPS. Our sole job, and my job particularly as chair, is to look after the wealth creation, the wealth preservation, the dreams, the aspirations of every member of the fund. The fund has just under 100,000 members at the moment, and we look after 30 billion rands worth of assets for those members. And that's our sole job at just about every day. We have meetings, formal meetings 4 times a year, but we have loads of other meetings, informal meetings, to discuss issues that come up. In 2010, we launched what has become known as Section B of the fund. Bear in mind, it's not a separate fund, it's another section of the same fund. The Section A part of the fund is the Sanlam part, the old policy-driven retirement annuity that so many people were familiar with, and maybe still are. In 2010, we launched Section B, the so-called new generation section. There's no policy, there's no policy restrictions, there's no termination penalties, there's none of the sort of hassle that one has with the old insurance company type RA, and you choose the investments, which are all unit trusts of one sort or another, to back your own RA. It didn't take long for us to realize that what we'd launched was, to take a leaf out of Linda's slide, we'd launched the smartphone RA, but we still had most of our members, and still do, with the old sort of push button or dial telephone RA being the policy driven one. So in 2012 we closed Section A, not that we don't look after the Section A members. We just said we're not going to sell any more of those because that's not the best thing for our members. The best thing for our members is to buy the cell phone type of RA in Section B. Right from the start, it was possible, and maybe we should move to the next slide if we can. Right from the start, it was possible within the fund to move from Section A to Section B, a so-called intra-fund conversion. It's very easy to do. It doesn't involve leaving one fund and joining another. It doesn't necessarily involve cashing out and reinvesting. It can be very, very simple to do, but quite complex to actually navigate your way through the minefield of what is necessary to do. Principally because by leaving the Sanlam section, there may well be a so-called early termination penalty. Now, these early termination penalties are not only levied by Sanlam, they're levied by every insurance company out there. They're extremely unpopular. In those days when the agent or the advisor sold you your RA, they weren't obliged to fully disclose all the costs and how the costs were deducted from your RA. And what we're discovering now is the real effect of those costs. So right from the start, when we launched Section B in 2010, it was possible to do an intra-fund conversion. And many members indeed did that, because at that time, their retirement annuities at Sanlam had been running for quite some time, and the termination penalties were either zero or very low. If they were low, the decision that one has to make is, do I save enough on the costs in the new section to justify paying the penalty? And there you need some help. It's not often a clear-cut decision, and certain assumptions about your particular circumstances need to be made. It's not necessarily a clear-cut decision. But in 2010, many of the members, and we've been monitoring this for the last 10 years, many of the members would have had to pay very high termination penalties, which wouldn't have been mitigated by the lower costs in Section B. So it's now that 10 years later, enough of those retirement annuities, those Sanlam or Section A retirement annuities, have been running for long enough that it makes sense now for members to move from Section A to Section B, because the termination penalties are either very low or in fact nothing at all. So what we've done in conjunction with PPS Investments is to offer to members that will conduct the intra-fund conversion 0% admin fee for at least 5 years. That means the admin fee that you pay is simply for the administration of your retirement annuity in Section B. You still will have to pay the investment fees because the investment managers have to be paid. But what we're offering to members now is to say you don't have to pay any administration fees for at least 5 years. If you do that conversion, you have a choice of, and James Fraser will take you through the choice of funds, a large range of PPS branded portfolios, from conservative through to moderate, through to aggressive, onshore, offshore, fixed interest, equity, you name it, there's something there for you, with one possible exception if it comes up in questions. The other advantage, apart from the flexibility, which we'll discuss in a moment, is that by investing in those funds, you add to your profit share. So those of you that already have profit shares will be able to earn additional profit share by switching out of Section A, where you don't get profit share, into Section B, into these funds, and increase your profit share. And your profit share is, it's probably PPS's worst kept secret. It's just the most marvelous benefit that PPS offers its members, where all the profits that PPS makes are fed back to the members, not to shareholders, to the members. So here's another way that you can add to your own profit share. The other advantage is the flexibility, which I think is so critical at times like we're suffering through or enduring right now. In Section A, if you stop paying your premiums, if you say, I can't afford to pay the inflation increase this year, I want to early retire, those penalties are imposed, and they can be quite onerous. In Section B, none of that applies. It is completely and utterly flexible. If you are undergoing right now some financial hardship, all you have to do is stop paying. Nothing, there's no penalty. Your investments will still be looked after. You'll still get the same performance as you would have done before. No penalties. And when things get better, you can simply carry on paying your contributions again. You can increase them when you need to. You can decrease them when you need to. And you can retire whenever suits you, not what it says on the policy document. So I think if we go to the next slide, we can just see two examples. Let's just have a look at what that 0% admin fee actually means. Let's pick a client in the top line there, a 64-year-old client that does an intra-fund conversion. The 64-year-old client, by the way, almost certainly will have zero or very, very low penalties unless that 64-year-old client took out the retirement annuity when they were 55, and it hasn't been running very long. That client or member does the intra-fund conversion out of Section A into Section B, pays zero admin fee for 5 years, until age 69 if they choose to retire later, for example, than age 66. And so many of us these days are finding that we do retire later, we're having to work longer. If it's a younger client, and the example there is a 54-year-old client that does an intra-fund conversion, that client or member will pay zero admin fee at least until age 66, or a period of 12 years, they pay no admin fee whatsoever. That 54-year-old client could easily have a retirement annuity they took out 25 years ago. And again, the penalties imposed by the insurance company may well be low enough to justify that intra-fund conversion and allow the members to move into that highly flexible, highly efficient area of Section B. The trustees, by the way, don't favor Section A over Section B. We have 100,000 members. We look after every single one of them in exactly the same way. We hold Sanlam to the same level of very high scrutiny that we hold PPS Investments and the two administrators who administer your benefits. We make no distinction at all between the members. If anything, we probably hold Sanlam to a higher level of scrutiny because of these fees, these termination fees. We have an extraordinarily good relationship with Sanlam. Wasn't always the case, but these days we have an extraordinarily good relationship with them. I have full access as chairman of the fund. I've attended meetings in the chief executive office at Sanlam. Very frank and open relationship. These early termination penalties that are levied by the insurance companies are, I'll say, to some extent unavoidable. We may discuss them in the Q&A session later. But it's not just Sanlam that imposes them. As I said, Metropolitan, as was Momentum, Old Mutual, Liberty, all impose these penalties on the short-lived policies. I think I'll stop there and let James Fraser lead you through some of the detail. and then hopefully we'll have a very interactive and discussion afterwards in the Q&A session. Over to you, James.
Sure, thank you, James. Just a reminder to everyone, there is a Q&A section of this webinar. It's really good to get an interactive discussion going towards the end. I think that's actually the most important part, rather than us just talking on monologues. So please find that Q&A section and ask any questions you want. We will try and answer them, and any ones that we can't answer, we'll send around a summary afterwards. Yeah, we obviously want to answer your direct questions just rather than talking around how the fund works. So I'm going to repeat a couple of things that have been spoken about previously, but that's because they're important, and I just do want to reinforce those. But I'm going to discuss now over the next few minutes more information about the retirement fund, the special offer, and about PPS Investments itself, because that's where Section B of the fund sits. To recap on what James said, there are two sections to the PPS Retirement Annuity Fund. There's what's known as Section A, which is the old underwritten policy section of the fund administered by Sanlam. And then there's the new generation known as Section B of the fund, which is the new generation section. And it's important, as James said, to understand that because they're both sections of exactly the same fund, it's much easier to move from Section A to Section B than to move to another fund, which could also be an option for yourselves. The IFC is much simpler and faster. Something called a Section 14, which is a transfer to another fund, can take up to 6 months with multiple bits of paperwork, but the IFC is very straightforward to make that move. Some things remain the same. So James mentioned the professional independent board of trustees. That board, as James said, is exactly the same on both sections. So that great independent oversight remains on the fund. The various pension fund regulations stay the same, as well as the rules of the fund stay the same in both sections. And the same tax benefits that apply to all retirement funds still applies as well. But what the rest of my presentation will focus on is more around what some of the differences are. And I'm also going to try and answer two very important questions. So one is, will moving to the new generation or a section of the fund, which is Section B, actually be a benefit to you? How do you know whether it's the right thing to do or not? And then the second thing is, how do costs impact on your retirement savings? So what are the benefits of Section B? Again, I'm going to repeat a couple of things that James mentioned. The key part is it gives you full control of your investment with flexibility and transparency. And it also provides you with the additional benefits that are available on the PPS Investments platform. And I've got a few slides on that later on. And a very important part of it is if you're a qualifying PPS member, it allows you to earn additional profit share on top of your existing profit share that you're earning. And that didn't happen in Section A of the fund. What does flexibility and transparency mean? It's quite sort of high-level, vague terms, but it does mean that there are no transaction costs if you want to change your investment option. It means that there's no penalties if you want to change your debit order. You can start, stop, increase, decrease, and change your debit order with no costs or fees or penalties. All fees are clearly defined and communicated upfront and on an ongoing basis. And remember, in this case, if you take advantage of the offer, the administration fees will be zero. You also have the flexibility to choose your retirement date from age 55. That age 55 is a legal limitation, but from any age from 55, you can retire. So you can decide to retire early or delay your retirement, and there won't be any penalties. And you'll have full access to your investments via the PPSI secure online portal. And this is something where we've been focusing on the last few years around digital enablement and making your investments as available to you as possible, and by your financial advisor. So on that secure site, you can view your statements, you can transact, you can download tax certificates. We've implemented electronic signatures. There's no paper required. That's the critical piece of functionality during this lockdown time. So your financial advisor can assist you with those transactions and then send you the paperwork. And there's no requirement to print out a paper signature, find a scanner somewhere and scan it back in. It can all be done online between yourself and your financial advisor. Now to address an important question that I asked earlier, is an inch fund conversion to Section B actually a benefit to you? And unfortunately, the answer is it depends. There's no one size fits all to retirement. Everyone's journey is unique, You all have your different plans or strategies for your retirement and what you want to happen there. So you need to be clear about what level of flexibility and choice that you require and how that fits into your overall strategic retirement plans. And we do recommend getting advice from a PPS accredited financial advisor who can look at your holistic situation. So what I'm going to talk to you about the rest of this presentation is specific to this Section A pot of assets, but obviously that needs to be looked at on a holistic basis, ideally. And that's where the financial advisor can come in and assist you. An important component, but not the only component of the decision, is around costs and how they impact your retirement savings. So we have built an easy-to-use tool called the Retirement Cost Calculator that illustrates the impact of costs on your retirement savings with a specific focus on Section A and B. And again, coming back to the uniqueness of everyone's situation, depending on how long you've got until your Section A policy matures or your retirement date there will lead to different termination fees. So again, that needs to be taken into consideration. Now, the screen that's being shown to you now is the output of the retirement cost calculator, and I'll talk to you exactly what it means and what easy parts to look at to assist you with your decision. But the inputs include the current value of Section A of your PPS retirement annuity fund, your retirement date or maturity date of that policy, any existing debit order information, any termination charges, and any costs and fees, which is known in the industry as something called an effective annual cost, which is something that was developed by the industry to enable a fair comparison between different product offerings based solely on costs. So it does enable that like-for-like comparison, which has been difficult in the past. So your financial advisor will help you to source all of that information, and I'll show you some slides later on about where it can be obtained from. So you need all that information to be able to use the tool. So everything that comes out of the tool is factual. It's just based on those numbers and some industry standard assumptions. And the illustrative outputs are based on the cost of your retirement savings in Section A and what the cost would be in Section B. So looking at the graph, the blue bar on the left-hand side is if you do nothing, you remain in Section A of the fund. And then the following 4 bars show what would happen if you transferred to Section B immediately in 1 year, 3 years and 5 years. So it might not be the ideal time to move immediately. It could be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, depending on the costs involved. And that's why we show those different time periods. Now, the important thing to look out for is the little green blocks on top of those grey bars. So basically, if there is a green block on top of those bars, it means from a cost perspective, you would be better off moving from Section A to Section B based on the information you've input into the system. And as you said before, it's not always going to show a green bar. There are cases when it's better to remain as you are, and there might be cases where you need to delay. But this gives you a good indication of that. And your financial advisor can go into more detail around things beyond the cost as well. Now, what's excluded from this calculation to enable this fair comparison between different product providers is the profit share component. So if you are a qualifying PPS member, you would earn profit share on top of these cost benefits as well. And something that Linda mentioned, and I'll go into more detail later on around this family network pricing, also isn't included in here, and that's where you get a benefit for scale of assets on the platform. So the other important decision is around which investment option to select. The zero fee offer until retirement is linked to the full range of PPS funds. The fund range is comprehensive and covers, as you can see, various risk profiles from conservative to aggressive. It covers local and offshore, passive and active, and multi-managed versus single manager funds. So we're confident that our solution set is well diversified and can help you achieve your unique retirement goals. And your financial advisor, again, can help you with the decision around which fund option to select. And now to talk a bit more about the profit share. Not all of you might know how the profit share works from a PPS investments perspective. The profit share allocation of PPS investments is actually provided on 2 levels. And that's linked to where the revenue is earned in the business. And that revenue is earned in 2 places. One is the administration fee, which is related to what we call the product wrapper. So that would be if you're in a retirement annuity, a tax-free investment account, an endowment product, or a living annuity, for example. There's an administration fee charge there. And then the second level is what we're looking at now, which is the fund range. So if you're invested in the PPS fund range, you will also earn a profit share based on the assets in those funds. Now, due to the zero fee on this offer of the assets that would move from Section A to Section B, there would be no profit share on that first level, that administration level, just for these assets. But for any other assets you have with PPS Investments, you would earn the profit share on that product wrapper level. And then for all assets on the platform where it's invested in the PPS investment options, you would earn another profit share allocation from the fund perspective. So now what? If you make that decision to move, what's the rest of the retirement journey like with PPS? Because PPS is well known for its life insurance solutions, which generally end at retirement, and usually with the payment of your profit share account to you. However, with the expansion of the PPS group into short-term insurance, medical aid, financial planning and investments, the actual relationship with the PPS member has grown beyond one of a work life into a lifetime of mutuality. And this is really important because PPS members live longer, much longer than the general population, which means saving enough for retirement can be a challenge. And the PPS member has a unique savings requirement, which can be addressed by a financial advisor who understands the professional market. So PPS members should ideally see their profit share account as a supplement to their retirement savings and use it to ensure their retirement is more comfortable. And once you've decided to retire, PPS Investments can provide you with income for retirement through either a living annuity, but also something that we call a hybrid annuity, which combines the best of a living annuity with a guaranteed annuity. And there's been lots of articles in the press over the last year to 6 months around the benefits of this hybrid offering. So again, if you can speak to your financial advisor about those to find out more. In addition, when your PPS profit share account vests, it's administered by PPS Investments. So you can actually see it alongside all of your other investment holdings on the platform. And you can very simply set up a regular withdrawal to supplement your income when required. I mentioned earlier as well that a benefit of moving to Section B was you would then be a client of PPS Investments and would have access to all the benefits of that. Now, obviously, I would think that because I'm employed by PPS Investments, but I really do think that we've got a fantastic offering. So some of those things just to talk to is we've got a full product range from an investments perspective. I mentioned a lot of those earlier when I was talking about the profit share. So we've got a full retirement suite, a post-retirement solutions in terms of the living annuity and hybrid annuity, tax-free investment accounts, endowments, etc. A key differentiator between PPS Investments and some other areas of the group are that non-members can actually invest with us as well. So that could talk to family members, but also just plain non-members as well. So we have two ranges of products, one called the PPS range and the other called the open range. And that can benefit in a couple of ways. So I've spoken about profit share earlier, but a key thing for this is qualifying PPS members can earn additional profit share by linking to non-PPS members who are also family members. So if you have children's investments or your spouse isn't a member but has investments, the member can link to those assets and earn profit share in addition to their standard offering. That also links into the administration fee perspective. So we mentioned family network earlier. Now the key concept behind this is bulk buying. At the moment, our administration fee scale is a sliding scale. So the more assets you have on the platform, the less that you pay. And what this family network does is it allows you to consolidate all of your family's investments. There are certain criteria around that. And as a family, you place yourself on that sliding scale. And therefore, you benefit from all of those assets being combined, and everybody benefits from the overall lower fee. So again, very much a benefit for looking at financial planning from a family perspective as well, and consolidating all of your assets onto one platform to benefit from the profit share linking and the family network fee reduction. You also have access to top asset managers. So in addition to the PPS fund range I mentioned earlier, we also have a select list of what we believe are top asset managers and funds on our platform, which you have access to. And we have been very much focusing on how to engage with advisors and clients from an online digital perspective. So you have complete control of your investments through our online secure site and an app. This last slide is actually the campaign webpage. You can access this using the URL at the top there. And it basically talks through all of the information that we've shared as part of this presentation and a bit more detail. So on the left-hand side there, you can see how to get to the retirement cost calculation tool, how to request the certain information from Sanlam to be able to complete the inputs into that tool. If you want more information around each of the funds in the PPS fund range, you can see that in the second column. And just to understand the intra-fund conversion process, that's in the third column. Obviously, if you speak to your financial advisor, you don't need to get into this detail at all, and they can assist you. And again, just to reiterate, we really do believe this is an important decision. It should be taken in a holistic way with all of your financial planning, and therefore speaking to a PPS accredited financial advisor to assist with those discussions. So I'd like to leave it there and see what questions we've got from the audience.
Thank you, James. So I just want to build a bridge while we have a look at the questions. I just want to build a bridge between what you were saying in terms of people's journey and decision-making process. So this particular conversation is complex in terms of retirement fund conversion. But the bridge that I'd like to build is the point that you made in terms of our members' life expectancy, and therefore the journey map that you put on that PPS can support you both pre, at, and post retirement, ensuring that the planning pre, the planning at, and the planning post is mitigating those longevity risks, market risk, consumption risk, and inflation risks. So there's the retirement fund conversion is a great time to engage, to have a look at the full holistic plan that you need in that context. And with that in mind, the very first question that has actually come up, James Fraser, is for you. Has the savings of PPS members who are professional been diluted by those who have joined as non-members? I think this relates to your open platform, our open platform, and our member platform. So back to you, Mr. Fraser.
Sure, no problem at all. And the answer is a definitive no, it's not diluted at all. In fact, the more open members that we have on the platform, the more that the qualifying members benefit. So the open members don't qualify for profit share. So any profits that are earned related to a non-member are actually paid out to the members. So it's actually a benefit to have these open members on the platform. Yeah, so it's actually a positive.
Thanks so much for qualifying that one. The next one, Mr. Downey, is for you. Is there no smooth bonus fund in section B?
Yeah, it's a good question and one that comes up every time. The smooth bonus option is something that can only be offered by an insurance company. What the insurance company does is it invests the assets of the member in the market to a greater or lesser extent according to a specific strategic asset allocation, and over time pays out less than the good returns in good years to soften the blow in the bad years. And to do that, to be able to hold reserves back in the good years to pay back in the bad years, you need an insurance company license, a specific insurance company license, which PPS doesn't have. And so we don't have a smooth bonus fund. What we do have, is, as you saw in James Fraser's list, is a number of conservative funds. So there's a money market fund, there's a fixed interest fund, there's a conservative equity fund, but they're not the same as a smooth bonus fund. So no, we don't have a smooth bonus fund in section B because we can't. We would have if we could.
Thank you so much, James. You're very popular today because the next question is also for you. Why not do a section 14 transfer out? What benefit is there in doing a transfer to section B instead of another fund?
I think James Fraser alluded to that in his section. The section A process, and some members have done this. They have left section A in a section 14 process and gone to a completely different service provider. That involves paperwork, some considerable paperwork, because the trustees and the principal officer of the outgoing fund have to fill in a whole stack of paperwork, and the trustees and principal officer of the incoming fund have to fill out paperwork. It then involves an application to the regulator to have that Section 14 transfer approved. That regulator can easily take up to 6 months to approve, but what will happen as soon as you effect your Section 14 decision is that you will be disinvested from the market, because they have to fix the amount that is being transferred. So you can't remain invested in the market. You will be cashed out, and you will stay out of the market until that approval has been forthcoming from the regulator. Only then can you reinvest. Now, if that 6 months happens to include March 2020, then you're going to be very chuffed, because you didn't go down 35% along with the rest of the market. But those months and times are rare, and it's more likely to actually harm your investments to be out to do the Section 14. The intra-fund conversion does not involve any application to the regulator, because you haven't left the fund. There is no regulator approval required. You're simply converting from one section of the fund to another. You may be out of the market a day or two, but certainly not the 6 months that almost certainly would be the case in a Section 14.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. Yes, of course, Mr. Fraser.
Cool. Now, just to add, I mean, two other key things are definitely the profit share. So if you're a qualifying member, you can't get that on any other platform. And related to that is the family pricing. So the more assets you or your family have on the PPSI platform, the less that you pay in total. And again, that's quite a unique offering in the market as well. So those are two other good reasons not to move to another platform.
Thank you. I think that both of those responses clarify that question. I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to be selective at this point on the questions that have been published and as we pose them. So an easy one to answer is one posed regarding, do we have a list of PPS accredited financial advisors? And in this particular forum, as we said, our wealth managers are here to assist you, and we most certainly do have a list, and we can publish that list onto this chat section, and we can also direct you to our wealth managers via the PPS web page. So absolutely no problem there, and we'll certainly put that up into the chat later on today. The next question was slightly more complex. What is PPSI's opinion on transfers from Section A to Section B if the Section A RA is invested in either SA equity to its full extent or offshore equity? Therefore, the question here is about breaking the grandfather clause. James Fraser, I'm not sure if you'd like to answer that, but if I could give an answer from our perspective, at an advice perspective, before I hand over to you. So in the context of holistic financial planning, diversification is key. And therefore, understanding your full offshore exposure is critical in making that decision. When we look at your entire portfolio and not just the retirement fund conversion in isolation, decisions would then need to be made against what would be of benefit to your total portfolio, also taking into account your current global exposure, because breaking that grandfather clause doesn't allow you to go back into that maximum post that event. So from an advice point of view, we'd want to look at it within the context of the holistic. James, I'm going to hand over to you because it was posed as a PPSI question.
No, I think what you've answered is 100% what I'd have said. So yeah, to me, you need to get advice. What's your end goal? What's your strategy? Yeah, taking everything offshore and being 100% in equity, unless there's a specific requirement for it, generally you'd want to try and diversify. Yeah, so please speak to your financial advisor. They'll be able to guide you further. Would be my view.
Okay,
Linda,
awesome.
maybe I could just add to that.
Yes, please.
The question comes from a historical perspective. In the either late 90s or early 2000s, Sanlam allowed some members on their own balance sheet, on Sanlam's balance sheet, to invest 100% offshore or 100% equity, which was actually in contravention of the investment guidelines at the time. But because they were using their whole balance sheet instead of just the members' balance sheet, they allowed them to do that. In 2011, something called Regulation 28 of the Pension Funds Act, and the RA fund falls under that, was promulgated, which means that all of that, those maximums and minimums of where you're allowed to invest your money as an RA member, apply at member level. But they said anybody that didn't comply in 2011 didn't have to comply. And that's what this grandfathering means, is that you become a grandfather in that your asset allocation stays where it was before and gets old. If you do an intra-fund conversion, you will undo your grandfathering. So if you are one of those members that is 100% equity or 100% offshore, you absolutely need advice, as James Fraser said, as to, is this now the time to undo my grandfathering or not? If it's not, then you shouldn't do the conversion. And please, can I just answer the one question about the penalties? You know, it's a bee in my bonnet, so just quickly if we have time. There's a question there that says, why are the penalties of changing so high? Can't PPS decrease them? So let's just be clear there, it's not PPS that's applying the penalty. When the member bought that retirement annuity many years ago, the insurance company paid the advisor the full brokerage and commission for maybe 30 years of that policy in the first 2 years that that policy existed. And they also deducted from the policy their own costs for the full duration of that policy. That means that probably for the first year or 15 months, the member contributed essentially nothing to their own retirement annuity because the costs were being paid to the broker, the advisor at the time, and to Sanlam itself. They then thought to themselves, right, I've got 30 years to recoup those costs. So there was essentially a loan account on the member's policy. And that is what these penalties are. It's commissions and costs that were paid upfront so many years ago. And we've heard this complaint from so many members that my advisor sold me the policy and then I never heard from him or her again. That's why, because they were paid in 2 years and there was nothing further for them to be paid for to service the client. The commissions that may or may not be paid in Section B are not paid, but they're not front-end loaded like that at all. The advisor is remunerated on an ongoing basis to give ongoing support and advice to the member. Another reason why we chose to close Section A and concentrate on Section B. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you so much, Mr. Downey. At this stage, I'd like to thank all our attendees, participants, and in particular, Mr. Downey and Mr. Fraser for the wisdom and inputs that they have given us. Regarding the accreditation of PPS accreditation list, what we've decided is that we will be including that in the post-webinar email to you. So our wealth manager list will be supplied to you later in the day. At this point in time, I'm going to formally close the session and thank each of you for spending the time with us today, and we look forward to serving you in the future. Have a good day further and keep warm. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.